Dog Lover is a game in which you will be trying to collect dogs, feed them, as well as give them plenty of walks, toys, and try to get the most points to prove you are the best dog lover. To do so, you'll be collecting cards from the center tab below by using tricks. Tricks will give you unique patterns. You'll start with one, but you can unlock more throughout the game in order to gain cards. The only restrictions are one, you have to gain every card here, so you can't somehow line this up so you only gain this. You must gain that pattern. You can rotate it, of course, to fit however you see please, so that or that. The other thing is this guard dog. You may never take more than 2 cards from the row or column it's guarding. So in this case, I could easily take this card and these 2, but I wouldn't be able to take these 2 and this one, as it is guarding this row here. Let's say I was to take these 2 and this card. Now, wherever this asterisk is, the guard dog is going to move there, meaning that's now the column or row it is guarding. Afterwards, you'll always be able to fill up, meaning the next player can take cards. There are different kinds of cards you'll collect. Food cards, such as the canned food or all the cards I collected earlier, will give you food cubes of the same type. Use those to feed your dogs. The dogs each have their own specific requirement, as they can be a little picky sometimes. Or if you're lucky, you may get a wild, which can feed for any food type. Toys, such as the Frisbee and Chew toy, will reward you points for each different one at the end of the game. Bones earn you a number of points depending on how many dogs you have fed at the end of the game and the number of bones in your hand. Other cards like Walk and Best Friend are cards that as soon as you collect them, you attach them to a dog. They will give bonus victory points or give you unique rules, such as the traits, which will give you additional points depending on its new rules. Training is used to either gain new tricks or simply gain victory points. As you can see, the tricks have different costs. So this one would only cost 1 training, while these would cost 2 training cards. And they would give you more options. It does not replace in terms of the different tricks in different ways you can collect cards. There's also going to be this fetch card bouncing in and out. At any time, you may use the fetch card to swap with a card in the area, so you can get that on your turn, and then someone else can pick up the fetch card and therefore use it later or right away in order to get an additional card. Finally, there are adoption papers. Once you have 2, you can trade them in for one of the rescue dogs. These are similar to the previous dogs, except unlike just being fed and giving points, most of these have additional rules to get even more points, either referring to very specific traits, possibly other dogs, or even other items. So this is a way to get even more points in sort of a end game strategy, if for one or possibly more if you can get them. The game will continue refilling the center lineup until you come across the end game card. Then you will make sure everyone has the same number of turns and then calculate points. Points will be equal to the dogs that are fed plus any cards attached to them. So in this case, if Ichi was not fed, I would not get the points for the walk, or Ichi, in fact, I would lose some points. You also gain points for some of the things I mentioned in hand. You will use this fun little score pad to see who has the most points and therefore has the happiest dogs. This is a quick, lighter game based on the previous Cat Lady from AEG, but I've actually only played that in a demo at a convention once. Not enough for me to really comment and compare the two. I'm really going to focus on this game, and not just because I'm a dog lover. Now, what I do remember that, I think it was just rows and columns. Feel free to correct me on that. But I really love the trick method. By the way, there is a basic sit if you want everyone to use the same starting one, but I wouldn't use that. I love the different patterns. I think they're really clever and creative. And not only buying new ones obviously give you more. This one can only collect 3 cards. Most of these collect 4, possibly 5. But sometimes, let me actually just swap this back in here. I might not be as interested in stand because my pattern's almost like that. So there's, I think, a lot more interesting choice in picking up these different tricks. And in particular, some of these, I noticed I had a lot of fun once picking them. So for example, actually the crawl is a great example. This is a really good card. It gives 5, but if the guard dog is in essence in the center locations, you can't use it because that means collecting more than 2 cards. So I remember one time actually being able to be like, oh, I'm going to put them here using this card setup, not just get the cards I want, but that way you can't use your big card. So there is a little bit of planning that way. But I'm going to be honest, that was a really rare exception. For the most part, you're going to just be focusing on yourself, which isn't too bad, especially for a game like this. You're going to have fun taking this card, and luckily, because this is on the card showing it here, if I'm like, can I get the bone and this Frisbee? You can rotate this around in your head to see if it can fit how you want it to. It really feels like it's almost a little puzzle game. The thing being that you really only focus on your turn because there's nothing you can do, nor I think I would want to be added to interrupt or interact with other opponents. So you just wait to see what's available during your time, and hopefully whatever cards you need are up. This deck is balanced, I think, in a way. I didn't actually look at the numbers, but I do know that you add or remove cards depending on player count. So I assume that the chance that if you wanted a specific kind of food should technically percentage-wise be the same regardless of player count. What is also a little bit random, but I think at the very least can help you with a strategy are the rescue dogs over here. The cool thing about them is they're sort of like the end game scoring goals you often see, this time being public though, not secret ones. Because you don't get any in the beginning, what tends to happen is you'll buy the one that fits you at least. Like if you already had a few big dogs, then maybe you'd buy a tripod. Maybe you'll buy it early on if you happen to get it and then go for it. But I found it more likely that you'd get 2 adoption papers after you sort of started something, and then you'd see like, okay, that one already works for me a little bit. It's not the worst thing in the world. It really helps once you get one because you can feel like you have something going forward, and they're really fun to help build, and that's where a lot of your points are going to come from. Of course, there is the worrisome problem of if you can feed them or not. But I think as long as you don't go overboard and getting every single possible dog out there on the board, you should be pretty fine. And I don't think it was a common occurrence, like for a dog to go unfed, maybe 1 or 2 every now and then, but nothing like someone didn't get their entire board wiped. This is a light game that you're about having fun. It's not about feeling bad because you made one wrong move. You're probably going to get away with some points. Most of the cards tend to do something, which is nice, but sometimes the card would come out, like for example, adoption papers. Once you have too many dogs or you just none of them were out there for you, they're not going to do much. And the traits, these traits, when picked up, have to be played right away, and they can only attach to certain dogs. Sometimes you may have just start off with, let's say, a small dog, and the trait needs to be attached onto a medium. Well, if you got it, it's too late. It's gone. And even it technically has a penalty if you can't attach it to a dog. But usually the times when I was annoyed by it was when not because I got hurt by a penalty, but because it was too early for the penalty to matter. Like I didn't have any cards or food cards yet. And by the time like it just happened, all the traits came out early on and no one got many of them because they just didn't have the right dogs or something. And I really wish there was a way for cards like that. Maybe if Fetch could grab something from the discard pile, but that might stretch out time too long. I think there's enough. I wouldn't call it analysis process. It's not that bad, at least with my group. I didn't think there was too much analysis, just the right amount, like when you're trying to, decide how things fit in, that maybe adding Fetch to the discard pile would gamify it just too much, that the extra rules that are just there for the guy who, if I want that, I can go do like a 2-hour long game or something. This is meant to be a light, quick game, and that is understandable. It's why this deck being random, while it's a bit of a pain, it's fine. You're still going to see most of the cards coming out. You're going to have a fun time just collecting a bunch of cards, and I don't think we had a game when someone got like washed out in terms of not being able to feed their dogs. So you're still going to have fun and be able to score up your points. One person will do better than the others, but at the very least, you'll have a great time playing with your dog, getting them toys and feeding them. And hopefully you just happen to be the one who does it the best. Crits and misses for Dog Lover. Crits. The unique patterns on the trick cards made for an enjoyable experience in terms of actually buying and gaining cards from the central area. The card being able to rotate made it a lot easier for most people to find out which cards they wanted and how to orient the cards in such a way that they can take those cards on the field without angering the guard dog. Misses. This is a lighter game that happens to use a lot of randomness, and that isn't bad in and of itself, but it means this is not the kind of game where you're going to have some very long-term strategies. There's no reason to pay too much attention between turns, unless, of course, you would just want to help people out and try to guess the pattern to get the cards they want. And sometimes the rescue shelter dog that would help you doesn't come out, or all the food cards are at the beginning or end can make the game maybe not as much enjoyable if it was more evenly spread out. This one is a really small complaint, but it was just one that bothered me and my group a little bit. there are 3 different food resources and they become cubes. And we often confuse the dry food with the scraps because the dry food was a light brown cube when the scraps was the red because of an apple. But the bowl that they put the dry food in was red. So people often mix those two up from time to time when they had them in their resource pool. It would have been nice and maybe they were shaped so that you always knew a cylinder was a food or something like that, or maybe something a bit more distinct. That way that a color that appears in the scrap food image does not share a color with the dry food. So my misses for this game really were, it has the randomness of a deck that would happen, which I really shouldn't complain too much as someone who likes deck builders. And the cubes are a little bit annoying, just a small component thing. But those aren't too big of a deal. This is a light, fun game that has cute dogs. And in terms of actually the puzzling out part, that was extremely fun. Now, like I said in the beginning, I have not played that much Cat Lady, but from what little I know of it and playing this, probably I wouldn't know if the tricks are enough to consider an improvement. You can probably just buy the one that is more appropriate for you. If you're more of a dog person like me, you probably want this one. If you're more of a cat person, go for the cat one. I think that's perfectly fine. Go for the pet that suits you. Regardless, though, this is a cute light game, and I think it's just the right pacing in terms of just collecting a lot of fun stuff and sitting at the table in such a way that also if you were to bring this out, I think with family and friends who maybe not as experienced with games, because of the nature of the game of just there's no reason to plan ahead. And yeah, maybe you don't want to, if you get very aggressive, like I really need that canned food, especially near the end. But when it's their turn, you can help them out and be like, okay, and like wait a little bit and see how they're going. If they're having trouble being like, I can't get my trick to fit in here, it's very easy to be like, oh no, that's no problem. Let me help. What if you tried this pattern? I don't think like you can leave them and they'll find things on their own and feel good about it. But if they're having trouble, it's very easy to go in there. You don't have to feel like you're quarterbacking. And when you find that perfect fit, they'll be just as excited too to be like, oh, I can do that because the fetch card allows me to grab an extra card too or something. It works out really well. And of course, I'm a little biased. It's got dogs. Like I said, I'm a dog person. And the names, they're fantastic. They really put in some excellent work in naming some of these dogs. Let me know if you've had the chance to play this or Cat Lady. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think there are enough differences in here? Is it really just a pet reskin? Let me know in those comments down below. Love to hear about that. And in particular, if you have played both, are you thinking of, do you have both? Did you consider one an upgrade over another? Or are you keeping it solely based one on theme? Or do you just love the whole system so much you have both? Love to hear from you in the comments down below. Thank you so much. And if you know someone who you think might be interested in this game, especially if they're a dog lover, please send them this video and don't forget to like and subscribe. Until then, I'm Will, and this has been a Roll for Crit. Oh, good girl.